are back. It's Danny Flexen and Ayman Khan with SO Live. That was a kind of LA Night, Lidl version or Aldi version of LA Night there. Guys, great to see you. We are the most interactive show on boxing YouTube. So we're going to want your questions, your comments, your likes, your subscriptions, your bank details, the lot. Ayman, how's life treating you?
Your bank details. You sound like George Agdegwengo there. That's a blast from maybe 2010 or so. But I'm great. I'm pumped. I'm supercharged to be here, to be talking to yourself. Don't know if this weekend's going to be a brilliant occasion or a bit of a fright night. Don't know if I want to spend hours in a darkened room after it. We'll see. We'll discuss it here. You guys will be discussing it as well in the comments. Can't wait for it.
Yeah, all this talk about Anthony Joshua, he's just copied it from Aaron Rodgers, but we'll talk about that in due course. But we're going to be starting with Tyson Fury's bid to achieve superstardom. I mean, some out there will say he's already there. Frank Warren among them, if he's watching this. He's already landed in Saudi, has Warren. I spoke to him briefly earlier. But yeah, Tyson Fury against Francis Ngannou, king of heavyweight boxing against king of heavyweight MMA. A lot of people think they already know what the result's going to be. But as we keep getting reminded from not just Frank Warren, but Big John Fury and plenty of others, usually involved with the promotion, it has to be said, anything can happen when you put these guys from separate codes in against each other. Ayman, what do you make of the whole thing? I asked you off camera how big an event, how big a splash you expected this to make, and you were pretty positive about it.
Yeah, look, I think it's going to be a huge event, regardless of promotion aside or promoters aside, their speak and things like that. You have legitimately got two of the biggest fighters in their respective fight classes fighting and squaring off against each other for the old adage of the baddest man on the planet, with Mike Tyson in the mix there. Tyson Fury, no doubt, as boxing fans, we know his ability and skill and what he's been before and what he's come to now and how he can promote a fight. Then you've got Francis Ngannou. I think he still stands as, obviously he's no longer in the UFC promotion, having left Dana White to see this opportunity and see more opportunities and get more money for him. They're obviously not very well paid for fighting in the UFC there, which is an ongoing issue, but
Sorry, Dana, if you're watching.
Yeah, sorry, Dana. Doff my cap to you. A great event over the weekend, though, to be fair to them. But look, he was the last reigning heavyweight UFC champion and a real absolute killer in the ring. It's just whether he can translate into the square ring as opposed to the octagon against Tyson Fury. Now, a couple of little slight things. I think it's going to be a great event, but just to note as well, Francis Ngannou isn't a complete novice when it comes to lacing on the boxing gloves. He has sparred the likes of, I believe, Joseph Parker and Joe Joyce in the past there. So they've had that experiences together. So he's not a complete nobody in the ring, but we'll see when he's coming up against Tyson Fury as somebody in the ring, whether he can shine on a real big occasion.
All right, let's get to some of your comments. Keep them coming throughout the show. Ainsley Shand, remember you from last week, says Fury's the cash cow like Canelo. Who's the biggest star, though? Frank Warren says it's Fury. I'm not convinced on a global scale just yet. S. Clayton, I'm assuming that stands for Simon Clayton, whether it's the real one or not, the fugitive from justice. We don't know, but he's giving me a thumbs up, so I appreciate that regardless. Troubleshooter Freddie says, you've got the two perfect clickbait names for that title, haven't you? Well, yeah, it's kind of our job. But also, they are making news this week. I don't think it can be classed as clickbait because Anthony Joshua is making noise about various things, including going into a darkened room and changing trainers and maybe still fighting Wilder later this year or early next year. I don't know if any of that will happen, except the darkened room, because he seems to already be on the verge of that, as we've seen from social media, which kind of negates the thing about going off the grid. But we'll get to that. S. Clayton says, shit show on Saturday with the exception of Wardley Adelaide. We will be talking about the undercard of Fury and Ngannou. But yeah, I was at the press conference last week. For Wardley Adelaide. They had their own press conference before they flew out to Saudi, which is pretty cool. And that was a real fun press conference as well. A lot of back and forth after their infamous brawl at the red carpet event. So we'll see how that one pans out. But I agree, it's a very good fight. Although I quite like Bakoli Takam as well in terms of entertainment value. Ainsley Shand again says it will be massive, even though it's garbage. It's a very succinct way of putting it. Maybe that would have been an alternative headline. Where are we? Theme says, how sustainable is the Saudi model? We can talk a bit about that shortly. Let's have a look. Tony Lyon says, Fury ain't the cash cow. Well, this will be a real test, won't it? I guess, of Fury's commercial pulling power. So we'll find out. And then Ainsley Shand is asking Tony, who is the cash cow? I mean, I think this will show us just how much Fury can translate his infamy, popularity. You know, we've seen the books, the bestsellers, the Netflix series. He's looked to cross over into different areas a number of times in the past couple of years. He is, you know, world champion. He's not undisputed, of course. Only got one of the 4 major belts. Usyk having the rest. But he is the most talked about heavyweight. He has got the highest profile, you'd have to say at this point. And he is selling out stadiums, or stadia, if you prefer, in the boxing community against not necessarily, you know, a huge commercial attraction opponents. So you'd have to believe that if Fury is to fight an Usyk in the undisputed fight, or Joshua, it'd be even bigger commercial attraction in fights like that. So against Francis Ngannou, I think that's more the unknown area, how commercially successful, because I don't think he's got a chance in the ring, you know, just to you know, foreshadow my prediction from later. But I think as a commercial attraction, how big was he in UFC? How big is he now? He's left UFC and he doesn't have that machine behind him. How much can he match Fury in terms of talking up the fight and the back and forth and doing the crazy stunts out and about during fight week? A lot of that will dictate how well this fight performs on pay-per-view. And some of that reflected or ancillary benefit will be given to Fury. So we shall see. Ayman, what do you think about who's the cash cow?
No, the cash cow for me is Tyson Fury for sure. I think Francis Ngannou, look at with if I remember correctly, with Francis Ngannou pay-per-view fights or cards which Fury, Ngannou was on, they had to kind of put quite a few big fights on the undercard too, with the cards that he headlined on. And with Tyson Fury, like you mentioned there, with other with the fights that he's had recently, especially the last couple of fights where it was in the later throes of winter in the UK, where people still came out to fill out arenas or stadiums, like we said, to go watch him. We're looking at someone who really has a bona fide resume of being able to draw people into watching a fight with him. So of the two, look, I think it's definitely Tyson Fury is the one who's the real draw here, especially as well when it comes to being on the mic too. Francis Ngannou kind of does his thing in the ring as well, as opposed to Fury. He's not really one who he'll bite back a little bit on the microphone, but he's not really going to cut the WWE style promo that Fury can do in the build up. So I tend to imagine that those sort of moments will be a bit more muted. I can't remember where the first press conference happened here in the UK. The second one will happen over in Saudi Arabia. And I don't think too many risks will be taken to want to upset the apple cart with some behavior to sell fights that we often see over this side or in the USA. I think there'll be a lot more respect shown in the lead up. We've had our, if anything was going to go about, we've had that opportunity. Now time for respect and last throws of the build up before those pay-per-views come in. Let's also just to remember as well, in the UK, these are two fighters who appeared on BT and now TNT Sports. So very familiar to the UK audience. I'll imagine the UK buyers who are going to be subscribing or going to be buying this event know the capabilities of both fighters here, which is an added ingredient as well, that they've seen these two fighters before, that have seen these two fighters want to clash. And I want to throw something out, a question quickly to the people in the chat too. We're writing off Francis Ngannou in this fight. And look, you've got reason to write off Francis Ngannou, but is that because of the greatness of Tyson Fury? We've seen Fury had a couple of dents in him, but he's always risen from those dents. Would you be saying the same thing? Would you be writing off Francis Ngannou should Anthony Joshua find himself in the ring this weekend against Francis Ngannou? Let me know in the comments.
It's a good question. And on that note, we've got a poll up at the moment, Fury and Ngannou, who wins and how. So please do vote in that. And we've got a few more comments. Thunder Road. This is going to take a while to answer this one, so maybe we'll leave this towards the end of the show. Thunder Road. But he says, can we get a bio on Ayman? Where's he from? When? How did he join Seconds Out? Does he support a football club? So obviously all the important questions. Is he as socially awkward around women as Danny? Now that's a bit of a presumption, first of all, because Ayman might not even be attracted to women. He could be any number of sexualities. So don't presume, first of all. Although, no, Ayman is a straight man. Let me just make that clear before he gets upset with me. Tony Lyon says, AJ still is even the cash cow. Oh, sorry, still is the cash cow, even with 2 L's from Usyk. Marcelo Nascimento says, Is it wrong the British is on the line outside Britain? He means the British title, of course, between Wardley and Adelaide. Says, just reaffirm Saudi taking over. If they're getting all the mega fights, let's not let them have all the decent undercard ones too. It's an interesting point because it's rare that you'll see a Board of Control championship defended or competed for outside the UK. But there is precedent for it. It has happened before. I believe it's happened in Gibraltar. And there was somewhere else nearly 100 years ago, to be fair, maybe more. I think it was Australia. You could correct me if I'm wrong, but we were talking about this at the Wardley Adelaide press conference. So there is precedent for it. But yes, I imagine the power of Saudi boxing has had a lot to do with this almost unprecedented act. Tony Lyons, again, about AJ, says he's the most talked about because of... Oh, no, he's talking about Tyson Fury here, sorry. He's the most talked about because of the shite he's doing. Would be the most talked about if he was fighting... Wouldn't be the most talked about if he was fighting real boxers. Tony is very passionate about this point, looking down this. Chris says, this fight is like asking a rugby league player to compete against Lionel Messi on a football field. It's a very good point. I like the way you've formed it as well. More Tony Lyons here. He's taken over a little bit. Ainsley Shan's Wi-Fi is playing up. Thanks for letting us know. Leon the Canteen says, Fury will be in the running for #1 earning athlete, not just boxer this year, assuming Usyk is also this year. I think that's very unlikely, but not that he'll be in the running, but that Usyk will also be this year. Lifetime Aeon says he can't beat no one. That's why he's go different sports. I think I've just about got the gist of that. Tony Lyons responding to the AJ being on the rich list says he's not even made it onto the Forbes list. Tony, are you secretly, are you AJ's burner account while he's in the dark? You'll have to let us know, or don't let us know. Maybe you'll just disappear from the chat and we'll assume that our assumptions were correct. So Fury and Ngannou does say a lot about the Saudi power and the fact that Fury and Usyk have apparently signed for their fight as well, when several attempts were made to get over the line previously, and only when Fury is linked up with this new group led by His Excellency Turchi, however you pronounce his name. He follows us on Twitter, so I'll have to learn it at least. But yeah, so only when they came on the scene has the Usyk fight been agreed. The Ngannou one opens Riyadh season, which apparently is about 6 months long, which is a bit of a shock to me. But yeah, why not? And it is a great card, all heavyweight card. There's some interesting fights on the undercard as well. And as Frank Warren keeps saying, almost ad nauseum, it is a big event. And that's what we should see it as, rather than a competitive match necessarily inside the ring, a big spectacle. What do you think it tells us generally, Ayman, about the Saudi power base in boxing and how things seem to have shifted from the likes of Las Vegas and New York had a bit of a resurgence with the Barclays Center for a while? It all seems to be in the Middle East now.
Yeah, look, the bottom line with it, as is said, and I know like the Saudi Arabians will kind of say, look, we're trying to build ourselves as the entertainment capital, and we are a real big spot for entertainment. I don't doubt that. I've been over to, I was in Jeddah, which is still developing, and there is room and there is course for entertainment there. Wouldn't say I was bored in the region that's developing, as is look what they're looking to do with Riyadh and this 2030 plan to be this kind of entertainment hotspot. But right now, if we're looking at the bottom line here, as Stone Cold would once say so, the thing that's drawing people over, it's the money at the end of the day. It's the money and the bang for the buck for the jeopardy that these people put themselves in for in the ring. And that's always been, we've always, look, there's the cliche that goes around and we say, and I've said it, I'm sure you've said it, and everyone else has said it in boxing. And it's like, you can't begrudge a fighter for looking to take the most money. And that does stand completely. But then again, you can kind of say, look, I do kind of wish I was seeing this, basically in my own backyard in London or in Manchester, the Trafford fight, or the Old Trafford fight that Tyson Fury seems to have earmarked, but doesn't seem to be getting any closer to happening. He fought at Tottenham Stadium or Wembley or whatever it was. Like, we do want to see these fights, and it keeps getting further and further afield. There's no further afield to get to right now. And then it's also kind of, what position does boxing look to be in when the value in what Tyson Fury brings or what other people bring starts to diminish? Are they interested in boxing and looking to develop boxing in any sort of way? Right now, to be fair, there are green ticks to be delved out to the Saudi Arabians who are in control of this. I think they've drafted in Joe Gallagher, and they're creating this Mike Tyson Boxing Academy, I think it is, and Joe's, I believe, should speak to Joe, but just to get the assumptions around the cusp of what he's been drafted into, is that he's looking to develop some of these young Saudi fighters or people who are interested in boxing to get them to a position where the Saudis can celebrate their own fighters and start building their own region, which again, that kind of gets rid of, you know, the British fighters or any others, because they'll have their own fighters to deal with then at that point. But right now, look, all this kind of really comes down to is an opportunity for people who are really kind of risking their lives to make the most out of that risk. And really, that's fair enough in my book. And we've seen, Danny, you can probably come in this point, like, this happens throughout history. When it comes down to big fights, you sell the big fight to the highest bidder, and we've seen that throughout history. That's just what it is. And if it's Las Vegas, it's Las Vegas. If it's UK, it's UK. Right now, it's Saudi.
Yeah, it is cyclical, but I think one of the things as well is that because the time difference is minimal, there's only 3 hours between the UK and the Middle East for the most part. It makes it a lot easier to put all British fights or fights with big British interest in Saudi Arabia, because although we're losing out on a live gate, you know, at Wembley or at Tottenham or Old Trafford or wherever, pay-per-view wise and TV viewership wise, there's not a great deal of difference. All the major fight week events will be taking place while people are still awake over here as well. So it's not like a fight in the US. You know, it's harder. I don't think you'll see Canelo and another big star from America or Mexico or whatever fighting in the Middle East anytime soon, despite the money on offer, because of that very reason, because pay-per-view is still such a huge part of their model. But here, it's almost perfect because it's a very similar time zone. It's in a nice place. They've got brand spanking new venues. They're building stadia all the time. Weather's great most of the year. And you don't have to worry about clashing with other promoter shows in the UK, which has become more and more of a problem in recent times, and something we've spoke to both Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn about recently. So I can understand why, with all the money that's on offer, why a lot goes over there. And I expect Eubank Ben to end up there as well, especially if it's in December, which I'm not sure if it will be or not, but I don't see Ben necessarily getting his British license back without any, you know, extra time being taken and obstacles being put in place, whether fair or not fair. So I think that'll end up out there as well. And as long as we can watch it at a decent time, I don't feel particularly robbed of not being able to go and see it in person. Maybe that's more a reflection on me, because I'm not as keen to go and see fights in person as I once was. I'm happy to watch them at home in comfort. But yeah, I mean, I don't see a massive issue with it as long as it's not used, and it has been so far, but as long as it's less and less over time used to sports wash the human rights record of some of these Middle Eastern nations, because that is a major concern. And I know boxing promoters will always go where the biggest money is for their fighters and for themselves, and I don't blame them for that. But just on a wider scale, on a global kind of current affairs scale, you'd like to see the promoters, the boxers, or both use their platform in Saudi and in Qatar and in places like that to make statements and to push change, rather than just to say, well, we're going there, it's all about sport, we don't get involved in politics. You kind of can't help mixing the two when you're staging huge events there, because it brings the spotlight of the world on that region. And part of that spotlight will fall on the human rights issues. So just from me personally, not speaking for Seconds Out here or the boxing community as a whole, I would like to see that platform, the growing platform in that region, used for societal change, if at all possible.
Danny, just to interject there, sorry, before you jump on. We're both wrestling fans, and again, I'm not the most political either, but I think there is small changes that are being made. So was it in Jeddah? Sorry, was it in Riyadh specifically where the first female wrestling match happened? Is that right?
It was, yeah.
So those sort of things are happening now. I know that I'll mention this here as well. It's more the case for the women in that region specifically, as opposed to, you know, foreign women as well. But that's a small step towards those sort of things. So hopefully more and more of those small steps do happen. Yeah,
completely agree. Thunder Road says Ngannou versus Chisora would be more interesting. AJ versus Francis would be the same as Fury. Yeah, I can kind of see that. And Chisora is like a big figure in Saudi boxing, isn't he? Him and Joe Gallagher, whoever would have thought they'd be two of the key influential figures in this region. Untitled Bobby C says, yes, lads, was waiting for you guys to start streaming so I can listen while cooking some dinner. Well done, Untitled Bobby C. What are you having for dinner? Let us know. Maybe you can send us some. depending on how long it keeps. Tony Lyon says, I'll not disappear, bro. Was just giving you props before carrying on my comments. I'm just stating some facts, and people making out Fury is the cash cow is just nonsense, dude. I got bro bombed and dude bombed in the same message there. Unless one's for me and one's for Ayman. We have to discuss who gets what. Where are we?
Like
Chris
with the food.
Yeah. Chris says, I don't think Saudi will take over boxing. You won't get people wanting to travel on a regular basis. I'm not sure how much of it's based on travel, though. Yeah, it is, but then the infrastructure is being built around these stadiums as well. That's the other thing. So when I went to Abu Dhabi last year for Bivol was headlining, but there was some British talent on there as well. It was a Matchroom show. They were just building absolutely everywhere. So they've already got a stadium. They've already got Ferrari World theme park, water parks, all the stuff you get as a thriving tourist destination. And they're still building continuously. So they are trying to make it like a Vegas in the desert. Well, I mean, Vegas is in the desert, but a Vegas in the desert in the Middle East. So we'll have to see how that all pans out. Marcelo Nascimento says, if AJ were to fight Ngannou, would Saudi be interested? Usyk signs with Skills Challenge, but has Turkey taken over his contract? That's Turkey the man, not the country, or made him resign? Is this new outfit as keen on AJ Eddie as the last one? No, I don't think they are. I think they're already aligned with Tyson Fury and his team previously. That's why they had the Ngannou fight to open Riyadh season, because they're in charge of structuring that. So I think Turkey is the new power broker in the Middle East boxing scene. And I don't think the relationships are as close with Matchroom as they are with Tyson Fury's team. That could change, of course. And I think they'd be mad not to be interested in a anti-Joshua Deontay Wilder fight, which we will talk about in due course. Thunder Road says, Saudi will never be Vegas. Where are the vices? No gambling, alcohol, brothels, or weed. I'm not sure there's none. They are illegal, but I'm not sure there's none. But, you know, I don't know enough about it. I'm not an authority on the subject. Owen says, it's a shame Joshua has locked himself in a dark room until Wilder retires. I think he's only in there for 4 days. Maybe if it was Fury, because he retires every few days, but not Wilder. Marcelo Nascimento says, emergency services all risk their lives, but no one want them earning millions extra. I mean, I think a lot of people would want them earning millions extra. Whether that's feasible or not is different. But I think the argument always made with top-level sports stars is that they generate a lot of the revenue from which they're paid. So, you know, there is that element of it. Obviously, emergency services save lives, and that helps the economy also. So there's a whole political argument to have here, not one we've got time for, unfortunately. Leon the Canteen, no, that's more about the rich list. Chris says, I don't think Ngannou Fury is going to top Misfits 1.5 million buyers. Apart from TNT, who else is buying it? It's an interesting one. Will it have the crossover impact of something like KSI Fury? I'm inclined to agree, but then it was priced quite sensibly as well, wasn't it, KSI Fury? How much is Fury and Ngannou? Ayman, do you know? Is it $27.95?
I thought it was $21.95. Was that the KSI one?
KSI was $21.95.
I'll do some quick tapping on the keyboard
while
whilst you're reading the comments.
Now. I can fill time. I've still got a backlog of comments. When it's government putting the money up, you can't separate sport from politics, says Marcelo Nascimento. And you're quite right. You know, there's clearly a strategy at play here to use sport as a way to mask, conceal, or mitigate the human rights record as seen by the rest of the world, particularly the Western world. DB Cooper 1 says, bollocks. Don't hold back, mate. Don't sit on the fence. He says, Middle East has made huge progress whilst we in the West are literally going backwards. I say that as a lefty myself. Yeah, I mean, again, that's a wider debate and one we can have maybe on a different follow-up episode. You know,
Danny, it is $21.95.
How much?
$21.95.
That's a reasonable price. Maybe it will top the buyers then, because you're getting to see proper professional boxing on the undercard, like some decent fights, which we're going to talk about in a minute. Owen says, do you think Fury turns up at Crown Jewel November 4th? I think as long as nothing crazy happens in the Ngannou fight, like he doesn't get cut or injured in some way, I think he'll be there, yeah. I think, why wouldn't he be? He's out there anyway. He stay for another week. He's known to the WWE audience. There's still money to be made for him in WWE. I'd be very surprised if he's not there. King Dale Clark, Your Majesty, says, thoughts on AJ's Darkness retreat? I think it's silly. We're going to get on to AJ. We're going to talk about the Fury and Ngannou undercard briefly, and then we're going to get on to AJ and the Darkness and various other anti-Joshua subjects. DB Cooper's still talking about Saudi. Says, women can now drive, travel without male permission, have huge uptake in entering the employment sector. Open your mind and see the progress instead of pointing fingers. Maybe we should praise the progress. We're not saying there's no progress. What we are saying is that sport is being used as a tool to obscure some of the human rights issues that still remain. And I think some of the progress that's been made, I don't know how much you can attribute that to sport and festivals and music and so on being in that region. But again, a wider debate to be had there. Owen says the average age of a Saudi male is 26 years old. They've got major potential there. That's a stat I did not know, but a pertinent one. Leon the Canteen. Ngannou is an unbeaten world champion UFC fighter. He's not a bent back YouTuber. He can fight and has a puncher's chance. Listen, KSI had more than a puncher's chance, didn't he? He nearly beat Tommy Fury. So let's not spit on them too much. King Dale Clark still asking about the Darkness Retreat. He wants to know if anyone's been on it before in this country. I certainly haven't. We're talking about King Dale Clark was talking about Edwin Valero. Dale, you've already got us talking about AJ ahead of time. Edwin Valero might have to wait for another episode. As outstanding a talent, gone too soon as he was. Marcelo Nascimento, the last one for the time being, says, also no one wondering how all this infrastructure is getting built in such short time. Few times Saudi signed fights with stadiums still being built. Yeah, I mean, that's another human rights issue, the use of very cheap labour from other countries. And a lot of people have actually died in constructing some of the stadiums, not just for boxing, but also for football, the Qatar World Cup being a notable example. So I don't think we should just shut our eyes to all of that. But let's move on to the Fury and Ngannou undercard. And two fights in particular that have caught my eye are Carlos Takam going up against Martin Bakole. Bakole's been looking for a big fight for a long time. I don't know how much this qualifies. I mean, it's certainly on a big stage. And a very interesting fight. Takam's not on terrible form at the moment. They've both beat Tony Yoka, of course. So I guess whoever wins out of those two gets to take Tony Yoka at home, keep him on the mantelpiece, something like that. And then you've also got, as someone alluded to earlier, the British heavyweight title at stake in a foreign land, not for the first time, but it hasn't happened very often. And that's Fabio Wardley defending against David Adelaide. Things got very spicy between them at the red carpet launch event when they came to blows. And also, more recently, last week at the press conference before they went out to Saudi, they didn't get into a scrap this time, but there was plenty of words flying back and forth, which, they say sticks and stones won't break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Kind of agree with that because I felt a lot safer at the press conference than I'm sure Raheem and Frank did at the red carpet event when Fabio was actually being interviewed by SecondsOut when it all kicked off. But Ayman, what's your kind of pick of the undercard and how do you see those two fights going?
Yeah, so just want to highlight as well another fight that interests me too, and that being the career of Joseph Parker. He's now taking on Simon Keane at the weekend too. You kind of wonder, and people do kind of wonder and point the finger at Joe and say, how much has he got left? How much does he want to push for maybe capturing a world title? And Joe's look, I know he gets quite a bit of stick, but I don't think he's any mug at this sort of level. And Simon Keane really wants to kind of push on. He's like 34, 35 now. And not really kind of had that big fight to kind of show us if he's any good or any good shakes in the heavyweight division.
He's been keen though, hasn't he? He's been keen to move to this level.
Keen to move on, indeed. I wonder why you say that, Danny. But no, look, I feel that we'll get those answers there as to whether Simon Keane is a heavyweight who can do a little bit in the division, or he's just another one that falls into the back of the pack. And then also as well with Joe Parker as to whether he still has got enough to move and shake around the division himself and get back into a big fight, maybe try and take on Joe Joyce and defeat and event at defeat, maybe putting himself in line for another fight with Anthony Joshua as such. We'll get that answer soon enough. I was speaking to a couple of people in the media this week, and they were saying, look, Joe's a good fighter, but Simon Keane's got a bit of a punch about him. We'll see as well. That hasn't carried through to any sort of level as to where Joe Parker's been fighting right now. I know he's dispensed of other fighters that you should dispense of when you're trying to make a statement, but he's kind of dragged it out and put it on later in his fights where you've kind of looked at those measures with him. Those two fights that you mentioned there, first of all, I want to make a point to that British fight between Fabio Wardley and David Adelaide. I know David Adelaide kind of didn't cover himself in much glory when it came to the original red carpet scuffle, although in a sense his actions helped to promote the fight and really highlight it. But two very likable people, likable heavyweights who as well. Fabio's really separated himself from the pack in terms of the British heavyweights. Adelaide's trying to do that himself too. He does it when he speaks. He does it to a degree in the ring. He's had a couple of falters, undefeated still, but there's a lot of boxing fans will say he was defeated by Kamil Sokolowski, who's again another barometer at level to say you can do something domestically or not. Wardley Adelaide is taking that step up now. He has that confidence. He said at the press conference, "Look, my step up is now. I can admit that, but I'm ready to take that step up now." And I feel like, look, his opportunity to win that British title comes at this point. No disrespect to Fabio or anything like that, but if you're looking at past British title holders, you'd be saying that I'd favour myself. This is the one I would pick out to fight than any other one. Again, no disrespect to Fabio, but it's just the case that Fabio is also looking to prove himself. And I said last week as well that the shift had gone with Fabio. He'd gone from being this white collar fighter looking to saying, "Oh, what can he do?" to now, how far can he go? And that's a big push that he's made through his actions in the ring as well. I think it's a good fight between the two, but I'm favouring Fabio of the two because of what he's shown so far. But that does stand to be a real good fighting prospect. And then as well, what was the last one you said? It was Bakole.
Bakole Takam, yeah.
Bakole Takam. Look, Takam's we kind of shrugged inside because we've seen Takam give a lot in fights, especially with the way he does fight. He's an all-action fighter who does bring it with a leaky defense, and often finds himself on the defeat to fighters coming through. But he earned his opportunity by dispensing of, I forgot the name, the French heavyweight now, Tony Yoka, didn't he? Yeah,
both beat Tony Yoka, haven't they?
That's right. The surprise win against Tony Yoka, and now Carlos Takam finds himself in another opportunity against Martin Bakole, who's not fancied at all, is he? No one seems to want to get into the ring with him. He's very well liked amongst the boxing community here in the UK, but just can't seem to get his opportunity either. You'd hope and think that should he come through against Carlos Takam like we're feeling here, that he will then get the opportunity to fight for a title or fight for a final limit or whatever it is. But again, all these stand to be good opportunities for each heavyweight that's on this card, because it is what stands to be the card with the most eyes on it across all regions that are displaying the fights.
Yeah, I mean, unlike you, Ayman, I'm old enough to remember the likes of Mike Holden as British heavyweight champion. So against that kind of backdrop, Fabio Wardley doesn't look quite so bad, to be fair. But I understand what you're saying. You know, Tyson Fury's held the British title. Derek Chisora's held the British title when he was closer to his peak, of course, as well. Quiver, Mod Mother, if you can hear me, if you can get the poll results up for us for the first poll of the night, the Fury and Ngannou prediction poll. We'll get to read those out shortly. I'll just go to some of the comments. Chris says, Misfits didn't have a card like the Saudi card, so you think this will top Misfits? It will top Misfits among the hardcore boxing fraternity. Definitely, they'll get more buys from there. But it's the casual audience. You know, the casual audience followed, and Ayman made a point of this last week's episode, they followed the likes of KSI and some of the other Misfits fighters on the undercard from their, you know, YouTube channels and their other social media activities through to paying to watch them box. So, you know, in terms of how well known they are as personalities around the world, I think they're much more well known than the likes of, no disrespect, Joseph Parker, Fabio Wardley, Carlos Takam. So the card might be better for hardcore boxing people, and I assume the majority of our audience make up that number. But in terms of the wider audience as a whole, not so much. Young Tash says, Francis isn't unbeaten, mate. I'm not sure who said he was. Hopefully it wasn't me. JR says, Tommy Fury can't fight, Tyson can. It's going to be an easy fight against Ngannou. We'll see what your poll says in a minute. See if everyone agrees with that. Where are we? Tommy Fury will never get on another YouTube card. Even Jake Paul has lost interest. KSI is misfit, so he gets to call the shots. That's Chris who says that. DB Cooper still talking about people dying in F1 in Vegas this time. Won't hear a pipe in the media. Yeah, because we're not talking about Vegas, though, are we? We're talking about a big event that's taking place in Saudi Arabia, and that's why. It's not that we're trying to avoid talking about other areas of the world and their human rights issues. It's just that we're talking about Fury and Ngannou, and it happens to be taking place in Saudi Arabia.
You're thinking of Misfits. They're going to be in Brazil soon.
Oh, God, yeah. I'm always thinking of Misfits. Can't get them off my mind. Owen says, when Fury likely beats Usyk, who do you see as Fury's future opponents? Makhmudov and Zhang should build their name on Fury's undercard. It's an interesting point, but you've got, you know, some of the people on Fury's undercard are there because they're friendly with him. For example, Joseph Parker. You know, they're obviously really good friends. They've shared the gym many times before. So that's why he's there. And then some of the others, you know, good heavyweight fights in some cases. British title fight that was easy to get on there because, you know, Adelaide's promoted by the same person as Fury. Fabio Wardley are currently a free agent, I believe. So easy to make. But yeah, I see your point. You know, build them up on the undercard and they can become bigger stars in the process and make themselves viable commercially as a Fury opponent in the future. Who else we got? Leon the Canteen says it's hard to slag off the undercard. It's better than most of the recent PPV cards, UK and US. Completely agree. But it's better in terms of the quality of the fights, not so much the name value of the participants. I think that's a key distinction. Chris says, if Fury's legacy is going life and death 3 times with a 14-stone basketball player, then he has no legacy. I think that's very, very harsh on Deontay Wilder. Thunder Road says, hit the thumbs up chat. Appreciate you doing that for me, Thunder Road. Where are we? Poll results. Tyson Fury versus Francis Ngannou. How does it end? Ngannou gets a whopping 10% total of the votes, 8% KO, 2% points. Tyson Fury via KO, 64%. Fury via points, 24%. Interesting. I think a lot of it is going to depend on how seriously Tyson Fury takes this, how much he feels it's in his interest to keep the fight going. I know a lot of people felt Floyd Mayweather carried Conor McGregor in their fight that's most often referenced when talking about this one as a boxing MMA crossover. So we'll have to see what sort of approach Fury takes to the fight. Chris Andre Boxing says, Wardley versus Adelaide is refreshing to see. The heavyweight division is actually stacked, but B status level guys aren't taking risks to fight each other. These two are C status and undefeated right now and risking it. Couldn't agree more. Really, really good fight. The only thing I'd say is Adelaide, because of that subpar performance against Sokolovsky, has maybe not been talked up as much as an opponent for Fabio Wardley as the likes of Fraser Clark, for example, when we know that fight couldn't be made, unfortunately, at this stage. Marcelo Nascimento says, is boxing just a short to mid-term project for Saudi until they really embed themselves into football, American sports, which are the major wins? Possibly, but I think the barriers to accessibility in boxing are a lot lower than they are in some of those other sports you mentioned. It's a lot easier for people with a lot of money and a lot of influence in, you know, minor countries in terms of the sporting representation to get involved in boxing. You know, we talk about all the time in the UK how easy it is to become a promoter if you've got money and connections. There's no barriers to entry in the same way as like the fit and proper person test you get in football for owning a football club in the Premier League. So, you know, there's that element to it as well. Tony Lyons says, Marcelo Nascimento says, if Fury retired undefeated, would it be bad for the sport afterwards, as he's not making another star and keeping the money in the sport? After Floyd, we're still looking for the next. Kind of makes me think of wrestling again, like pro wrestling, in that, you know, you have to put over the next big star before you take your time off when you're in the autumn of your career. And it's something that Hulk Hogan was always kind of criticised for not doing. And John Cena has done it more. Roman Reigns has done it more. But yeah, so it's interesting. Obviously, we're not saying that boxing's scripted, and Fury, if he is to lose it, it'd have to be on the level. But yeah, I mean, it would be good to see Fury not retire undefeated. And he talked recently about signing another 10-fight deal. But this is only, you know, maybe 6 months after his most recent retirement dalliance. So we'll have to wait and see. Chris says, to make these crossover fights more competitive, they should give the non-boxer a head start. Yeah, but what's the head start? Because obviously, in terms of points, you could, yeah, but what is he going to get to, like, give him a couple of takedowns before the opening bell rings? I mean, you know, boxing's a lot to do with what, I'm assuming it's a tongue-in-cheek comment, but boxing's a lot to do with, you know, punishment accruing over time and accumulating. So I don't know how well a head start system would work in that context. But we've talked ourselves, I'm not going to say to death because there's still plenty of fight week to go, but we've talked a lot about Fury and Ngannou. And, you know, I think from what I can make out of the chat, most people seem to be looking forward to it. But now we switch to, I'm not going to say the forgotten man because we wouldn't be talking about him if he was. But Anthony Joshua has made a lot of headlines this week on Fury Fight Week. What a surprise. Didn't we used to criticise Fury for doing that on AJ Fight Week, and now it's gone the other way. Maybe that shows the shifting balance of star power in UK heavyweight boxing. I don't know. But yeah, Anthony Joshua's made headlines. He's going into a darkness retreat. Step into the dark, it's waiting, as Judgment Day entrance music heralds their arrival in WWE. Another WWE reference because we haven't had enough today. Anthony Joshua was going into a darkness retreat for a few days, although he did provoke some interesting comments by posting about it and sharing pictures of it on social media, which kind of partially negated the whole off-the-grid feel of what he was trying to achieve. He's also told the BBC he's switching trainers once again after his recent tenure with Derek James. And then he's hinted even more recently, teased the fact that him and Wilder could still clash on the undercard of Fury against Usyk should that take place, which we believe it will, unless Fury does retire. So yeah, lot going on with AJ at the moment. Gives an overall impression of someone who maybe is a bit lost. And I've certainly seen that point being made by others, but it does seem that way. He doesn't seem to know exactly where he's at the moment. He's a man who's looking for answers. What do you think, Ayman?
Yeah, look, I know. This is sort of fuel to the fire for people who like to laugh at AJ and say he's a bit goofy, he's a bit odd, he's a bit, like you say, lost. And I'm not saying that you're one of these people that do that, but there are a lot of people online that like to, really kind of pick apart everything that AJ does. And look, in the traditional sense of training, you'd kind of look at this and think this is very different. This is out there. This is very wild to kind of look at this. But from the conversation, from the conversations that I've had with people around the industry, I remember specifically speaking to Hearn as well, just to highlight this. Like, when you're at that top level, you look at, like, it's very hard to improve when you hit where your ceiling is. So all you're trying to do at that point is look for these 1% here and there to push you to further, to make those gains where you can. And this might be one of those where someone suggested to him, look, let's try this out for your mentality. Let's try this out for your, well-being. And he's gone, all right, I've not done that before. I've done everything there is in the book to try and improve myself throughout my career. Let's try something completely different. And he's gone for it. And a lot of people kind of like to, again, beat the dead horse is the cliche, right? That he's got a weak mentality. He's very much gettable. He's very much someone that you can infiltrate his mind and push, and you can defeat him before he's got in the ring. But this sort of thing where, look, you're just focused on your thoughts. Can you contain yourself with your own thoughts? Might be something that strengthens him. The thing that I want to highlight is, again, I think he highlighted in one of the quotes in the Men's Health magazine, he said, I've been watching the Fury documentary and I've seen things myself that I find there's mental weakness there for Tyson Fury, which I can exploit. And that's something that I look at and think, wow, okay, cool. That's the AJ that I want to see. That's the AJ that I want to look at to say, look, he's got something left. There's a fight that he wants. The ambition burns in him and he's found something and he's looking at it. So, look, I mean, as much as you like to joke about this potential, dark room thing, and it is out there and it is different, but if it finds AJ some comfort, if it finds AJ some strength that he can bounce back, hopefully it does. And we need him to bounce back, because the better AJ does, the better British boxing does in general. And I think that's just how it goes right now, along with Tyson Fury.
Yeah, I mean, the NFL star Aaron Rodgers did it not too long ago. I think it was in the off-season. He's with the New York Jets, quarterback now, was with the Green Bay Packers for many years. One of the best players in the game, veteran kind of stage of his career now. And he went into a darkness retreat, although I don't think he's exactly the same. He was apparently in complete darkness in one room for 2 days to kind of contemplate life and find answers and stuff. And he came out, with lots of positive things to say about the experience. A lot of people mocked him as well. The only thing I'd say about Joshua is, why post about it in advance and why post about it when you go to the actual place? Just if you feel it's something you need to do and it'll be beneficial for your mental health and whatever else, go and do it. If it works out or it doesn't, tell people afterwards, give us your review. But kind of talking about it in the build-up, it makes it seem like either a cry for help or a need for attention. And either way, that's not what we want to see from AJ. As you said, we want to see a focused, almost not cynical, but like ruthless AJ, someone who is watching the Fury documentary to get any extra edge he can over a future rival. Romford Ray says, great fight this weekend, great card, great everything. It's nice to see so much positivity on the chat. Tony Lyon says he's already been to that place with a +1, so he wasn't on his own. I think he just wanted time away from everyone and everything. Yeah, we all need that sometimes, but we don't all post about it before we do it necessarily. Although actually, there's probably a few people on my Facebook timeline that would. Chris says, didn't you see that show where they were in the dark last year? It had Eubank Senior on it and Gaza. Yeah, I saw bits of it on social media. I didn't see the actual show. Chris Andre Boxing says, I wonder if AJ sees Davison as insight into the workings of Fury ahead of a future fight, or if in the back of his mind he'll be wary of Ben's friendship with Tyson and end up paranoid about it. We'll talk about the trainer change in a minute, actually, and I think that's a very valid point, or valid points. Marcelo Nascimento says, seems like a PR stunt. Don't need to pay 2K to sit in a dark room. Just a weird way to get in the press. Yeah, just stop paying your electricity bill. Leon the Canteen says, I didn't even know Joshua was changing trainers. That's not good. I don't know if he actually is. He said he was to the BBC, but it just seems a very strange thing. We haven't heard it from Derek James's side. But yeah, perhaps that maybe it was news to Derek James as well. Maybe he learned about it on the BBC. Looney Bin says it ain't nothing to do with darkness. He's in nature. It's fresh air, not bloody darkness. I'm sure there was a darkness element of it. I'll have to reread the report. Tony Lyons says he didn't post it. Oh, he did. It's on his own social media, some of it, actually. He might not have taken the photos, but he definitely posted some of it on his sites, I'm pretty sure. Owen says, Dan has nailed it. AJ is crying for help and surrounded by parasites. He should have a chat with Tyson Fury and have a cry on his shoulder. Yeah, I'm not sure I'll see that happening anytime soon. But let's get on to the trainer thing. So he said to the BBC, yeah, I need to do this because I'm switching trainers at the moment. I've got a lot going on, basically. And it seemed to be kind of he said it in passing, as if most people were already aware of the fact he was changing trainers again. He's been with Derek James for, I think it's 2 fights. Obviously, the second training camp was to prepare for Dillian White, which never ended up happening. And he had got Robert Helenius at short notice. So he's not been with Derek James for long. I don't know if it's that he doesn't like being out in the States to train. Maybe he wants to be closer to home. Maybe he didn't mesh with James. But some people have said on social media, perhaps it's because of the recent form shown by Derek James fighters, with Jamel Charlo losing to Canelo and, of course, Errol Spence losing to Terence Crawford. And we had Frank Martin turn down the Shakur Stevenson fight as well. So is it that, the tide has turned against that gym? It's not flavor of the month anymore. Or is it just, AJ continuously looking for answers and not being able to find it with one specific trainer? That's the positive spin on it, perhaps. Ayman, what are your thoughts?
I don't know. It's kind of like it was obviously obviously notable thing to say when he said that. And the only plausible thing I could think of in terms of him staying with Derek is that because there's so much around Anthony Joshua, he's still actually in the process of getting everything gone from the Robert McCracken regime and things around that to Derek, and that process is still happening. I guess maybe he's still carving off what he doesn't need and does need, and then getting in the full throes of being with Derek. So I can only imagine that's a plausible kind of conclusion if it means he's still staying with Derek. But then I'm really kind of like pulling to kind of get to that conclusion. And what sounds more obvious is that he's changing trainers again, which is a bit of a strange decision to make, I guess. But also, when I say that, I also kind of make this argument whenever this kind of happens around with fighters that do change trainers. You've got one career. Why aren't you entitled to trainer shop and trainer hop? If it doesn't fit after 6 months, then just do it. Just go. You've got to be happy at the end of the day. And I think he spent time with the rumors are abound and floating that maybe he might be going to Ben Davis, and they just stand as rumors right now. But he has spent time at that gym. I think it's because it's closer to home. It's near Watford. I think it's in Harlow. So it makes sense that he can just go train there, be with some fighters, pick the mind of Ben Davison if he wants. And it kind of comes to people kind of say, well, Joshua is, looking for answers and things like that. In that Ben Davison package, you've got a scouting team that really thoroughly look at fights, really kind of look at, picking apart their opponents and picking apart fighters in the division, looking at influences in terms of looking at game plans and different game plans and different types of game plans from other fights in the history. There are a lot of potential answers that Joshua can find in the Ben Davison camp if he does choose to go there. Maybe he's just going there for now and looking to train hop to another one or train a try. for another fight. It might not be Ben Davison he sticks with. But look, for me, I know the traditional kind of answer is to say, you should be staying with one trainer and that's how you go. Maybe go back to Robert McCracken. That's where you had your best days. But I'm not someone who's up in arms about any fighter who decides to train a hop because they have one career. And AJ's got to maximize this last end of his career, especially if he wants to win the belt or have any real relevance at the top of the sport.
Before I go through the latest round of comments, we've got another poll up. We're spoiling you today. It's Anthony Joshua trainer search, stick or twist. Should he stay with Derek James or should he find a new trainer? Simple binary choice, one or the other. Let us know what you think. Vote in the poll, please. Chris Andre Boxing says, Ben Davison has said he'd be willing to train AJ. And the rumour is that's who he might take on, as Ayman just mentioned as well. Does Ben just see Fury as a professional relationship rather than a true mate? I don't know what the relationship's like between Ben Davison and Tyson Fury these days, but certainly in the recent past, they were very close. And even after not training together anymore. And I've always felt that was a mutual thing. They both always spoke very highly of each other. And it seemed very much, because Ben helped bring Tyson Fury back from his lowest ebb, that it was a relationship that transcended boxing. So I don't think it'd be right to say he saw him only as a professional relationship. But maybe he's got Fury's blessing to train AJ. Who knows? Marcelo Nascimento says, do you know of any times a trainer has decided to leave the fighter after a loss? Seems a lot more acceptable for the fighter to leave. I think the fighter's always going to be the one that leaves because he's the one spending the money or the percentage of his purse on the trainer. And he's the one that feels they need to change and freshen up their approach, either the gym, the trainer, or both, to win or to get back to winning ways. That's not really on the trainer, is it? The trainer's getting the money they get. They're going to carry on working with the fighter and preparing them to the best of their ability. It's not like they're going to say, well, you've lost, so get out. You're not worth anything to me anymore. It doesn't really work like that. They don't need them in the same way. Owen says, is Ben Davison the new go-to Adam Booth? He's the best. And I know what he means, like the flavour of the month trainer. But I think, if anything, that's probably Joe McNally at the moment. He seems to be adding new fighters at a rate of knots. And he is a very good trainer. And so is Ben Davison. So I think there's always going to be flavour of the month trainers depending on the results that they're generating. Ben Davison's done absolute wonders with Lee Wood, taking him from a fighter who was struggling. And Lee Wood's done some of this himself. I'm not giving all the credit to Ben and his team, but Lee Wood was someone who was struggling at domestic level and is now one of the best pound-for-pound British fighters. So, it's hard to argue with that level of success. It's easy to take someone who's achieved big things and just maintain that level, or even to improve it because you've already got a solid base. With Lee Wood, he's taken someone who was floundering, lost to Jazza Dickens in that MTK tournament. And now he's sitting on top of the world and getting big wins at world level. So, the proof's there. The proof of the pudding is in the eating, as they say. Chris Andre says, Joshua seems very analytical. Some say over-analytical. But it could be just that once he works with trainers, he just thinks they're overrated and isn't learning. In which case, is it really a bad thing? What I'd say is, if you're changing trainers on a regular basis because you're changing opponents on a regular basis and you pick a trainer suitable for that opponent, which is why I think Tyson Fury joined Sugar Hill initially for the second Wilder fight, but he stuck with him, obviously, since then. I think that makes sense. It makes all the sense in the world. But I think if you're just switching trainers to pick up new aspects to your game, regardless of the opponent, I can't think of many examples in history where that's worked out on a consistent basis. Chris says, Ben Davison, the new Buddy McGirt. Lol, yeah, I think we've all got the joke now. Looney Bin says, not to mention the boxer size classes. Very good. He'll never outlive that nickname. Davison has done well with his featherweight, says Chris. Yeah, we were just talking about that. Owen says, do you think Joshua joining Derek James's gym contributed to the downfall of Spence and Charlo? That's an interesting angle. Helenius was jamming Joshua's head off with Canelo Charlo a month later. Yeah, I mean, it's possible that some of the attention that was previously reserved for Charlo and Spence was diverted to Joshua. However, I think the Crawford that beat Spence and the Canelo that beat Charlo would have been hard to beat by pretty much anyone on those nights in question. Where are we? Keenan says he should let John Fury and his team train him. Look at the things they've done with Tyson Fury after the dark hole he fell down and came back on top. I think if John Fury had any role in that period in Tyson Fury's life, it was more as a father than as a trainer. I think the training aspect was more Fury himself, of course, because he's got a great base, and Ben Davison, as we've talked about. But that's not to minimise John Fury's role, but it was more the paternal role than anything else. Chris says pro boxing was tougher back in the day before social media. I trained a kid called Charlie Shepherd. I remember Charlie Shepherd. And brought tall Mongolian lads over in Choi and Shini Bayar. But they did win titles, British and IBO. Yeah, I remember all of them. I think I even interviewed Choi once, as difficult as that was with the language barrier and so on. But yeah, that's a very wide, broad topic or broad debate that we can have, but maybe not right now. Did you hear Fury had asked for a 24-foot ring for Francis Ngannou, says Tony Lyons. Tony, you're very much in the AJ camp. We've kind of discerned that now. I'm not sure I can believe everything you say about him or Fury without first verifying it. But we appreciate all the comments from you. And yeah, make sure you vote in the poll. Anthony Joshua, should he stick or twist? Should he stay with Derek James as his trainer, or should he find a new coach to be in the corner? And the other major AJ news or rumours before we get on to our final topic of the week is he's teased in the last day or so that the Wilder fight, Deontay Wilder fight, discussed many times in the past, is now perhaps back on for the undercard of Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk undisputed fight. What did you make of that, Ayman, when you heard?
First of all, on the poll as well, we kept it very simple. But if you're saying trainer change, put in the comments who you think would be a good fit. If you're saying it, love to hear that. I think at the moment trainer change is winning. So yeah, if you hear that opinion, let us know who you think should be in the mix with Anthony Joshua. But look, this potential Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder fight, look, love to see it. It's just very hard for me to get excited for it because there have been so many false starts in the background. In the forefront, I should say, with this fight ever getting over the line. I remember specifically the arbitration with Deontay Wilder for the Fury fight, for the Fury rematch. Eddie Hearn was coming out saying, we're 90%, 80%, 70%, 80%, 85%, 90%, we're nearly there, this, that, and the other. And it was all just kind of this waiting around. That's right. We're all this kind of wait around for this arbitration, which if you have a bit of a understanding of arbitration, and especially where boxing cases have gone in terms of wanting rematches in the past, I believe, in US courts, they've always kind of sided with the person who's looking to get that rematch, who's looking to enforce their contractual clauses. They've always sided with that. So you knew it was going that way, and it was presented as that the fight was close between Joshua and Wilder, and it was recently the same as well, and now the fight is not happening again. So it's great to hear it from Anthony Joshua's mouth to kind of get another person saying it as well, but it's just very hard to kind of be up for it because we've had those false dawns, and as well we had Danny Gilfillan speak to Eddie Hearn this week, and when you get fighters like the like of Manuel Charr or Mahmoud Charr, whatever he's going by right now, in the mix as well, potentially is rumored to be fighting Anthony Joshua too. Another fighters in the mix as well. It kind of dampens any small spirit you have towards that fight happening as well too. So, look, I'm right in the mode of I'll believe it when it's signed. I'll believe it when they're walking to the ring. I do hope it happens. There's still very much legs in the fight. But even Deontay Wilder now, coming up to a year, and he's not been in the ring. What's happening with Andy Ruiz? Andy Ruiz has not been in the ring. What about the third fight between them two? It's these. Joshua has the activity. Nothing seems to be going on with Wilder. Nothing seems to be going on with Ruiz. It's just hard to believe that right now these fighters are going to be fighting.
And just from Ayman's question, Looney Bin says AJ should go to Tunde. I hope that's a serious comment, Looney Bin, and not a tongue-in-cheek suggestion. Thunder Road says AJ should go with Peter Fury. Not the first person that said that, to be fair. And I'm pretty sure I've asked Peter Fury about it before, and he said he'd be willing to have a conversation with AJ. But didn't. I don't think anyone at the time thought that would actually be a realistic, like a plausible possibility. Looney Bin says Peter understands AJ's issues but can't relate to him on a social level. Tunde a better fit. I'm not really sure I like where you're going with that, Looney Bin. So yeah, maybe not. Maybe that's not the one. Tony Lyons accusing me of being a bit biased towards Frank Warren and Fury. And Owen says, Dan Flexen is very much an impartial boxing reporter. Have some respect, Tony. Thanks, Owen. Can you go around and beat him up for me? Cheers. Thunder Road says, only lions to lions in the camp. Yeah, maybe if he means that's the similarity, then yeah, the catchphrase won't change much. Right. So Tony now says, it was on TNT Sports Boxing, all in caps, with Carl Frampton in the middle asking the questions, and Francis brought up Fury wanting a 24-foot ring. Yeah, but unless Fury says that's true, that's not verifiable, is it? That's just, one fighter saying it to the other. We see lots of claims on these gloves are off style shows. Marcelo Nascimento says more trainer changes mean we don't see the Wilder fight for a while as he needs to settle in with the new trainer. We'll see him versus Chard and Caballero. That is a good point. Every time a fighter change, but in the same breath, Joshua is talking about changing trainers and talking about having the Wilder fight next. So maybe he's going to look for a trainer, or he's already working with a trainer and they're planning for the Wilder fight already. That is possible. And if it's Ben Davison, even more so, because he's got experience of opposing Wilder from the corner, hasn't he? So interesting. Could talk about this, just like Fury and Ngannou. We could talk about this for the whole show. But we need to get on to our final topic, which is keeping with the heavyweight theme, and a man that's already been brought up a few times, Alexander Usyk, the unified world heavyweight champion. We haven't seen him in action, of course, since the slightly controversial Daniel Dubois defense. That's a new Triple D for you, Daniel Dubois defense. Alexander Usyk saying in a recent interview that he's a bit banged up. He's got a few injuries going on, and that he needs, I think, was it a 14-week training camp he said he needed for the Tyson Fury fight, which obviously then throws into doubt any hope of the fight being in late December. Not that we held out much hope for that anyway. Ayman, did you see Usyk's comments? And if so, what did you make of them?
Didn't see them specifically, but I spoke to yourself around them and obviously just dissecting everything he's saying. I'm not surprised that if he is carrying a bit of wear and tear, he's carrying a few injuries. We kind of see him, I think, in his last camp for Daniel Dubois beforehand. There's also this, you can never truly kind of see what you're seeing with your eyes right now with social media and also in boxing, because there could be an amount of skullduggery in this, but he looked a lot slimmer and looked like someone who did have to put on quite a bit of muscle to get back to the heavyweight limit, or get back to a place where he was happy with to be taking on Daniel Dubois. So he must have had to put that on. What does that do to his body? I don't know. I'm not really someone who can kind of comment on that, but I can imagine there's that wear and tear there for Usyk, who may want to take that time to rest and recover. And that obviously, if it does, brings us into the next year for that fight to happen, which I'm not surprised. But if, and again, the skullduggery element, why would Usyk reveal that? And then also, if you're Tyson Fury reading that, again, you doubt it. But then also, if you take it on face value, you say, all right, I want a bit of that now. Get me in the ring with him now. Let's make that fight happen now. We've signed it now. Let's get it over the line. Let's get us actually fighting. So is there part of that going on? Potentially. We don't really know, because Usyk likes to be and cloak himself in this mysterious kind of character. We don't really know what's going on in his mind, and maybe there's part of that in it too as well. But look, if we take it on face value, it looks like the fight is going to be delayed a little bit longer to see the undisputed fight. I'm hoping we get it, but another minor that it seems on the surface of it.
And Owen says, Ayman knows his stuff. So you've got the Owen endorsement. Ayman, well done, mate. We're both in the Owen club now.
Cheers, Owen.
Yeah, thanks, Owen. He also says, if Usyk refuses to fight in December, when will the rematch happen? I'm assuming he means the Fury fight rather than the rematch. Unless he means the Daniel Dubois rematch. Riyadh season happens in March. And why does Usyk only fight once a year? Yeah, I mean, if Usyk is injured, you can't begrudge him. It will be the biggest fight of his life. Undisputed heavyweight title, first in the 4-belt era. Against Tyson Fury will be his, toughest opponent he's faced. So I can understand him wanting to be at or near his best. If it does run till March, January, February, you could see it happening. And then hopefully we get Usyk one or two more times that year if he starts out early in 2024 anyway. Chris says Usyk Fury ain't happening December 23rd. It never was. Yeah, a lot of people have said that, but then the same has been said about Eubank Ben, and now both fights look like they might be pushed to the early part of 2024. Or not pushed, maybe that was always the case. Owen says Riyadh ends in March. What, as in Riyadh will cease to exist? I think, yeah, you mean Riyadh season. I understand. I'm only joking. Then they're talking about whether Tony Lyons is a Fury hater. I don't know if he is a Fury hater, Leon the Canteen. I think maybe he's just more a big Joshua fan. But sometimes they're not mutually exclusive. Let's just say that. Before we get on to our goodbyes and stuff, Quiver, Mod Mother, if you can hear us, can you present the results of the second poll, please? Anthony Joshua, stick or twist? Should he stay with Derek James or should he employ a new trainer? And we've got, it's a close one. Find another trainer at 57% and stay with Derek James 42%. So most people are in favour of Joshua switching trainers once again. Now, there was a comment from Looney Bin where he clarified his comments on Tunde Ajayi being AJ's new trainer. So I'm just going to read this out because I quite liked it. He says, Tunde is one of AJ's biggest backers, partly because they are both Nigerian. Tunde focuses on the KO with yard, but also has finesse from his Mayweather gym days. It's not a joke suggestion. I'm serious. I mean, I'm sure Tunde would absolutely love to work with Anthony Joshua, although he did say he likes the fact that he only works with AY, that, you know, he can focus all his attention in one area. His attention, his concentration is not divided between several different fighters. And he has turned down a number of other fighters in recent years. But maybe Joshua's the one who can kind of melt that icy exterior in that sense. Chris says, if Usyk can KO Dubois with a jab, he can certainly hurt Fury. I think with Dubois, it was more being overcome by the accumulation of punches and the mental stress that he was under throughout the fight. I don't think it was a case of that jab was so potent it put his lights out, just to say. Tony Lyons says, if I don't agree about Fury and agree with something on AJ, it's my opinion. Yeah, Tony, I think you're protesting too much now, mate. I think you've agreed with pretty much everything that's negative about Fury and everything that's positive about AJ. It's all right to support one fighter more than another. You know, no one's criticising you for that. Well, maybe some people in the chat, but I'm certainly not. We've talked about all things heavyweight. Ayman, just before I let you go, just give us a number of predictions for the Saturday night card. So the top three fights, if you like. So Fury and Ngannou, specific predictions. You can't just say Fury wins. I think most people will agree with that. Fury and Ngannou, Takam Bakoli, and Wardley against David Adelaide.
So I think starting with Martin, Colin Takam and Martin Bakoli, I think it's probably, in my eyes, looking at maybe points for Bakoli, I'd probably say. Maybe if Bakoli does get the stoppage, it comes late. In Wardley and Adelaide, I'm favouring the current British champion right now. I'm favouring... I think they're both right when they say that the stoppage the fight isn't going to go to points, and I believe that to be the case. I'm not counting out David in any sort of route to success in that fight. I believe he can win the fight, but for me, I think Wardley stops him in the mid to late rounds. And then when it comes to Fury versus Ngannou, Fury will have to be on his P's and Q's for the first 3 to 4 rounds because Francis Ngannou does carry potency.
Reference there, just to say.
Fury does carry, Ngannou, does carry potency in that overhand right or the straight right hand. I've seen it happen. He's not, when it comes to the top and highest levels of the UFC, he's never been a one-hitter quitter, but he can hurt you with that right hand. And I think Fury will give him that respect. But then after that point, it's Fury's game. It's still Fury's game specifically throughout the whole fight, but just to be wary of that danger. Fury can get tagged. Fury can get hit. He's been hit by the likes of Steve Cunningham. He's been hit by Deontay Wilder. He's been hit and hurt before. I'm not saying Francis Ngannou can't do that. I'm saying he can, but Fury will be wary of it. And then I think eventually Fury will stop him, probably around round 10, unless Ngannou really tanks it in terms of his stamina. But I'm predicting around 10 stoppage for Tyson Fury.
Ayman says it's Fury's game. We all know it's LA Knight's game. Yeah. Marcelo Nascimento says Eddie saying he'll be forcing his stable to take competitive fights, then puts Campbell Hatton in with a guy who hadn't fought for 8 odd years just weeks ago. Yeah, I mean, you make a rod for your own back, I guess, when you make public statements like that. A bit like Boxer saying that their ring walks for the replacement main event, Isaac Chamberlain, Mikel Lawal, would be starting at 9:45 and they started at 10:20. So maybe just anything positive you want to talk about after it's happened rather than before. But yeah, on the Eddie point, I see it completely. And I think there have been more examples of him matching his prospects more, tougher. But yeah, I mean, it's not a great example there with Campbell Hatton. And not only that, the guy, you know, it was quite a competitive fight until the opponent didn't seem to want to engage much in the second half. So yeah, didn't work out too well. Chris says, Danny, Usyk broke Dubois down, didn't he? Yeah, he certainly did. Yeah, I mean, it was a methodical chipping away and then got rid of him. Leon the Canteen says, if Fury comes out of Saturday easy, I think December 23rd could happen. Fury wants to keep active. Yeah, but if it's mid-January, that's still relatively active compared to recent times for Fury, isn't it? But yeah, it's interesting that we only hear about these Usyk injuries now. Again, similar to the AJ news, on a Fury fight week. I think they all do it to each other, don't they? They don't like to feel left out. Tony Lyon says, I think AJ should go back to Tony Sims and go back to fighting how he used to and just go all out. I don't think that's a bad shout. I mean, Tony Sims got a very busy gym as well, being surrounded by young, hungry fighters, lots of quality sparring. I don't think that would be the worst thing. It's kind of debatable how much Tony Sims was solely in charge of AJ's training team during that period in his early professional career. I think there was still some elements of Robert McCracken being involved from the amateur days before it became official as pros. So we'd have to kind of look into that a bit more, perhaps. Owen's asking where Campbell Hatton goes from here. You know, I'd like to see him go the traditional route. I think he served his apprenticeship. I think we should see him challenging for, you know, English, British titles. I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. And I think he could suffer a defeat at this stage and still continue with his career and still make it to the top. Thunder Road says, what about Ayman's bio? I feel like I don't know anything about him compared to you, Danny. Thunder Road, you don't know as much about me as you think you do. I am not an open book. Not that there's anything creepy to find out, just to clarify. But yeah, Ayman's bio, we'll get to Ayman. Ayman can use his closing remarks to tell you as much or as little about himself as he wants. That's a fair deal, I think. Tony Lyons, I'm an AJ fan, yes. I'm not a Fury hater. I just don't agree on a lot of things he does, like this shit show with Francis when he could have fought a real boxer and given someone else a chance. All right, Tony, we believe you now. Chris Campbell says, Hands of Foam Hatton isn't going anywhere after 14 fights. He's a name, that's all. I think that's unfair. I think he's shown noticeable improvement in those 14 fights. He didn't have vast amateur experience before turning pro. He's still relatively young as well. I don't think you can write him off just yet. Owen says, Ayman got a law degree, I believe. Oh, Ayman, we found your stalker. Boxing legend in his spare time. Well, again, Ayman will tell us as much or as little as he wants to about himself momentarily. Chris says, Ngannou has to be economical with his punch output and make Fury use the ring to empty the tank. I love that. Empty the tank. We've had a Tunde reference, and now we've got another one. Chris Andre Boxing says, got to go, but great show, gents. Enjoy the fight card, everyone. God bless. Oh, that's wholesome. Marcelo Nascimento says, AJ has a TUE already, doesn't need Sims. Yeah, all right. Thanks for that, Marcelo Nascimento. I wish I hadn't read that out now. Just to say, we've got a new disclaimer we put on the channel recently for a few drug-related comments. So the views of Marcelo Nascimento, if that even is his real name, probably isn't, does not represent those of Seconds Out. Chris says 23rd of September was mentioned to put a spanner in Eddie Hearn's plans, or vice versa, perhaps. Like I said, they're all at it. Leon the Canteen says Tony Sims never trained Joshua. It was always McCracken. Not sure how true that is. You know, I've spoken to Tony about training AJ a number of times. I think he did have a role, at least. Tony says, AJ started off a beast, so why not go out a beast? I'd be happy to see that. Either Tony Sims or Rob. I'd be happy with either of them, to be honest. I'm not sure if AJ's relationship with Rob McCracken is repairable at this stage. But again, there are people that know both men a lot better than I do. So we shall see. All right. Oh, therapeutic exemptions aren't allowed by the New York Commission. Comedy gold there. Yeah, I mean, we weren't taking it too seriously, Owen, but we appreciate the clarification nonetheless. Right. Before we get on to Ayman, Ivan Danny Flexen, really appreciate you watching. If you're watching this on playback, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. We'll be back, obviously, next Monday at 5 p.m. when AJ and Ngannou, the biggest upset in boxing history. AJ and Ngannou. I ruined my own joke. Fury and Ngannou, when the biggest upset in boxing history will be in the rearview mirror. Just kidding, of course. But I'll leave the closing remarks to Ayman, who will either tell us his entire life story or just say goodbye. Ayman, over to you.
I'll give you a short form. I can't remember the questions. I was just looking for the questions up in the chat.
Do you support a football team, I think, was one.
I was born
socially awkward around women like me, apparently.
Maybe I'll leave that one to the side. But a football club, I support Watford. I was born in Watford, so Watford FC is much like where Anthony Joshua is from. So big Troy Deeney fan. I think he's got a link with Anthony Joshua as well. But yeah, we're in the doldrums right now, so it ain't great watching Watford, but big Watford FC fan. I'm 31 years old. I do have a law degree. I also have a master's degree in law. I've worked in law firms beforehand. What I was doing during when I was studying for my LPC, I'd always kind of talked about starting a YouTube channel. I looked at 3 areas. I looked at wrestling, because I quite like wrestling, not as much as I used to, but I still quite like wrestling. I looked at football, I looked at boxing. Wrestling, too much happening in the US. I couldn't really kind of make much headway there. Football has a load of red tape. Boxing, that was the one for me. So I started doing different around sort of content around boxing. I listened to the Boxing Asylum religiously. Someone saw one of my videos as I was chatting in the chat. Steve Wellings of the Boxing Asylum fame, who Danny knows well. That's the one. Said in the comments he's going to check out my video. I thought nothing of it. 5 minutes later, I saw, after the podcast ended, I saw a comment from Steve. Messaged Steve saying, do you have any advice or anything? He goes, funny enough, I'll get back to you on that. Gave him a couple of weeks, not got anything back. But then I got a phone call from Ben Faruqi, who opened the door for me. I worked with Ben Faruqi at Boxing News TV. Then eventually finished my master's degree in law. It was either get a job in law or get a job in boxing. I'm very much a go with the flow type of guy. Went with the flow. First thing that came up was a boxing job. Boxing job came in. Worked for Boxing Social for a bit. Then ended up leaving Boxing Social. Danny Flexen picked me up, essentially. Thought maybe I might go back to law.
Literally.
And yeah.
Diamond carry style.
But the call came in from Seconds Out, and the law was way too strong. And here I am enjoying my time very much at Seconds Out, living the dream, as it were. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. Am I socially awkward? I can be when I'm really tired. Otherwise, I'm quite well charged.
Specifically around women, I think was the question.
I don't know. I suppose that's for other people to comment. But no,
this is the thing. Like, I am socially awkward, but not just around women. I'm socially awkward around everyone in a social setting.
But hopefully that's a bit of a buyer for you. If you're looking for more, then I don't know. Maybe I'll start writing something out. But I'm not that interesting, to be fair. But yeah, very much. Just to cliff note it as well. Like, much more boxing content coming away. More bios of the fighters, which are more important, of the top two fighters: Tyson Fury versus Francis Ngannou. We've got Brady Raheem and Frank Trevor out there over in Saudi, keeping you abreast of every single update they can, and supporting as well back down here. So make sure you keep it tuned 2 seconds out if you want those key bars from this week, which is sure to create waves in the wider sphere. Even those boxing fans, traditionalists, we aren't too happy about it, in the wider sphere, there is significance about that fight, and we'll have you updated here on Seconds Out.
Thanks, guys. SO Live. Yeah.